As a kid, I remember my parents, actually, my mother more actively, trying to instill financial habits in me. When I was maybe about 5 and when she was preparing dinner, I sat at the kitchen table while she was cooking and she ensured that I was honing my math skills using money, coins, bills, etc. She would make up these imaginary situations and I would need to figure it out. Math problem using money. That was when I was maybe around 5. Now, when I was about 9, she actually brought me into the bank to set up a bank account. So it wasn't her doing it and saying, hey, you have a bank account. It was her taking me into the actual branch and having a discussion and having me sign off and understand that I am now opening up a bank account. She also taught me how to reconcile and balance a checkbook. So, yeah, that was maybe when I was around 12 and I took music lessons. And that was the key thing that I needed to reconcile every month. How much money was being spent for my music lessons each month? So I really learned and understood that it's important not only to make payments, but to reconcile those payments versus basically what my parents had budgeted. So I knew um, very well how much they were spending on my music lessons. And that actually put a little bit more accountability on me for, am I enjoying this? And actually practicing and, doing the best I could with the opportunity they were providing me. Fast forward a little while longer, I was a teenager and she brought me into the bank again. This time, she was trying to teach me about investing. And this is when I had the opportunity to purchase my first GIC. I realized as an adult that this was actually quite a unique scenario where my parent was more guiding me along understanding finances, understanding money, understanding budgets, and not being afraid of going to the bank, asking questions, setting up accounts, and actually starting off on the investing adventure. She always advised me also to be aware, understand if there are new products and opportunities that present themselves, that I should investigate them and see if there's anything in it that would be beneficial for my financial gain. So, what she did was she ensured that I had the right mindset when it came to financial planning and that it is something that's key, not being afraid and understanding what you may need to do or what you may not need to do for your particular situation. I have a lovely quote that leads really nicely into the discussion today, and it's from Melody Hobson. She is the former chairwoman of DreamWorks Animation and has a series of interesting TED Talks. She says, if you understand how money can work for and against you, you can make better decisions. Financial literacy is not about wealth, but about understanding money, regardless of the amount. It's about how you treat it and how you maximize opportunities. I'm delighted to have Sara McCullough, principal of WD Development, join me today on the podcast. Let me share a little bit about Sara. She has over 25 years of experience in the financial industry, including client communications, bank-owned and private-owned wealth management firms. She works with recent grads starting out their careers, business owners, medical professionals, and multi-generational families. She's family-oriented and enjoys reading, camping, cooking, and volunteering with children in her spare time. Welcome, Sara. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Awesome. So am I. Before we get started, I'm really curious. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions for you. The
Okay.
first one is WD development. So,
Mm-hmm.
how did you come up with this name, or what's the story behind the name? Let us know.
I thought for a long time about making this move. So you gave my experience. I did definitely start in a more traditional investment advisor and financial planning role, where I was managing investments and also doing the planning. And I thought for a long time about leaving kind of that structure and just doing the planning for clients, because that is the least common way to advise in Canada. And so I thought for a long time about doing it, about why I wanted to do it. And one of the things that I was finding in my conversations with my clients, it felt like they were always so focused on the investments, and it was hard to inspire the clients to expand the conversation. And I think part of the way we've structured investment management and we've kind of stapled what we call financial planning advice really to investment management, there were all these opportunities that people were just missing. And so the WD is Wild Dream. And so Wild Dream development, because I think we all have one. And I think we should just spend more time on seeing whether it's possible. What if it was possible? I think that's just a really exciting place to be. And I think we really could change the world we live in if more of us followed our wild dreams.
Awesome. That's beautiful. And, it's inspiring. So it's not only, thinking about the financing and the numbers, it's about what's the big picture? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? If you had not a worry, what would you be doing? And you're helping
Mm-hmm.
to get to that.
And I think that's part of switching, again, in this field of what we call financial planning or advice, or we really just stop at accumulating money, right? How much do you have? How much more can you get?
Right.
Money on its own is really boring. Nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
If I said to you, hey, Nicole, I've got this winning lottery ticket for 4 million, I'm going to give it to you, you're immediately thinking about what you would do with the money, right? So money is just a tool. When we talk about great chefs, we don't talk about the pans that they use, the knives that we talk about the final dish.
Yes.
And I think in this space of money, we get stuck on focused on the money. So as I say, on its own, really boring. What you can do with it, super exciting.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. My next question is, and it probably relates to, why it's WD, Wild Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
But some banks or financial institutions, they have what's called a personal financial planner. So could you give me a little bit or explain to me what's the difference between working with someone who is in a financial institution versus working with yourself?
Okay. Sure. And I'm going to give you a couple of distinctions in there because there's a couple of layers.
Mm-hmm.
So that personal financial planning designation that you see, that PFP, it really was a designation that was created by the banks, actually. So this was the certified financial planning designation has been around longer. It is a more intensive program. You need to have experience to actually use the letters CFP.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just passing the exam. There's also an experience component to it. And so what was happening was those bank employees kind of at the branch level didn't have a way to get to the CFP, right? It takes too much time. It takes too much work. You don't often stay in that role for long enough. So, but they wanted to be able to tell their clients that there was some planning knowledge here.
Got it.
So they created the PFP course, and the course requirements just fit better into that entry level space that a lot of the bank employees start in. So that's one difference.
Okay.
And then I think when you're looking for an advisor, depending on the type of advice that you need, you also need to understand whether the person you're speaking to is using their CFP knowledge, and is that their focus, or is there a focus on investment management and accumulating more investments for their clients? So there is a distinction there that you maybe people have done the designation, but that's not where their daily focus is. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
Can you give me maybe an example? Say I'm coming in and I'm in a bank. I'm going to my bank branch, and I'm speaking with a PFP who has a CF, who may be a certified financial planner. How could I know that distinction between whether or not they're using their certified financial planning skills versus their PFP?
Okay. So one of the distinctions is going to be what types of questions are they answering for you? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of investment advisors. So if we go one level up from the branch to kind of the wealth management divisions, all banks have those as well.
Right.
A lot of those advisors also have their CFP. Their focus, though, is on increasing the amount of investments they're managing because that's how they're compensated.
Got it.
Okay. And so it's a very different skill set than answering. One of the most common questions I get is, how do I buy a car when I'm retired?
Got it.
Okay. So there's no new money in there for an investment advisor.
Right.
That's just time and skill. A lot of the work I've been doing lately is around just how do you spend your money in retirement? There's been more and more articles about that seem to indicate you should delay your Canada Pension Plan payments until you're 70 instead of starting them at 65. And clients come to me all the time and say, like, how do I know? When do I start this? Or some of them will come to me and say, I'm going to delay because that's going to be better for me.
But how do they know?
My response is, we'll take a look at that.
Right.
I'm going to show you what that looks like. So the planning work, again, is really around working with the goals that you have and the money that you have and the choices that you have. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's not something that necessarily is going to increase my compensation because it's going to bring in more money.
Right.
It's something you as the client need to know, in my opinion. But when we look at how are bank employees and investment advisors compensated, they're compensated by how much money they bring in or how many transactions they do. And again, this is valuable. We all do need mortgages, car loans, investments. It's just a different skill set. It's a different conversation. And in Canada, because we've really stapled those two things together, it can be hard for clients even to pull them apart and understand, what is this person doing for me, and where do I still need a different conversation?
Perfect example, because I think it really shows, I think, when you're potentially at that financial institution, it's a narrower focus. Whereas if you're working more independently, there's a big picture looking at your whole goals. What's your dream? And how do you need to get there? What are the components of your actual financial situation? And it's personal, specific, and individualized, because everybody has unique situations they need to deal with. So
exactly.
Thank you for providing that, because I think that really helps, because everybody say, oh, I have a financial planner. And it may be, and there's nothing wrong with the institution.
Not at all.
But it might not be truly answering or looking at what you need to do or what you need to accomplish in the bigger picture of things. Correct. You're making money, but are you using and funneling that money the way you really need to be using it?
And I think we all have maybe different needs for the type of advice that I give and other advisors who work like me give. And that may be a one-time kind of number of meetings, and then you're good. There are some investment advisors that also will hire a certified financial planner, and that person's role is just to do the planning. But I think where I want people to start paying attention is if they are walking around with questions about how much do I need to save? Can I retire when I want? Can we buy a bigger house? If you've got those questions and you're not getting answers, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your investment advisor. It just means they don't provide that service, right? So you shouldn't, my goal is to answer your questions when you come to me so that you can make decisions with confidence about, do I make a job change? My meetings on Tuesday, my afternoon client was laid off. Mm-hmm. He had planned to work for 2 more years. Mm-hmm. He's in his early 60s. But now that he's been laid off, he's saying, I don't want to go back to work. Mm-hmm. Like, what if I just didn't? How much can we spend? Right. And so he's come to me to get that answered. My morning clients, very different situation. They're kind of mid-career, mid-family, and they're just looking for, where is our money going? Mm-hmm. We just don't feel like we have a grip on this. Mm-hmm. It's not that we're taking on debt. We're not overspending, but we have goals. We want a bigger house. We want to be able to spend time with our kids and each other. And we're just not sure where this is all going.
Right.
And so answering those questions isn't really about more money, more investments. It's about, here are the choices you have. If you do this today, here's what happens tomorrow.
Awesome. And Sara, I just love that response. And the reason being is one of the things, just from a real estate perspective, because mm-hmm. that's part of your financial portfolio potentially. If it's not now, maybe in the future.
Right.
One of the things I really like to focus on is for people to know more, to understand what the situation is, so they can prepare. So having that mm-hmm. understanding of preparing, so that when they actually make the decision, or you providing them with the information, they can be more confident in how moving forward. They feel that they've been informed and they have the answers they need in order to make an appropriate decision. So and also fits in with, when you are potentially purchasing a home, having a team. So having a team of experts such as yourself to help gather the information to help that decision-making process along. So
right.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. So now, one of the main focuses for our chat today is related to, improving financial literacy and financial acumen. And I know it's for everyone, but being a woman myself and having a lot of friends and interacting with my female friends, my male friends, sometimes I notice that men are more apt to talk about investing, have impromptu discussions, want to give you advice in terms of how to do investments. And my female friends are a bit more shy and reserved, or maybe there's not as much interest or understanding in order to, have those conversations. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to help people to really kind of improve or understand financial literacy and how, to improve their financial acumen in order to make those decisions.
I do think it's a really important topic. It is something that really drives a lot of the work that I do, because it's hugely important. We spend so much time working to make money, and if we don't understand how we can use it well, if we don't understand the decisions that we could make, and by default, if we don't make a decision, that's also a decision. And so I think it's just, we put so much effort into this that if we could make better decisions, I think that would, again, really change what we could do in a day.
Excellent. So what So in terms of, the financial planning and literacy, what are the key components? What are the key nuggets that people really should have a strong understanding of from a literacy perspective? What's
Um,
important?
can I back you up just for a minute,
Sure,
and we can
sure, of
talk a
course.
little bit about that gender difference that you mentioned?
Yes,
It
please.
absolutely is there for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's there for a number of reasons. And I think maybe sometimes the reason women avoid it is that, again, as I said earlier, we've really talked about financial planning and money like it's an investment exercise. And I said at the beginning, money's not that interesting. In a lot of ways, I can see why investments aren't that interesting.
Hmm.
I do find them fascinating. Not everybody does. That's fine. But that's where we've kind of focused the conversation. I do think as an industry, the wealth management industry has been very biased. I think we're trying to get better. But I think a lot of women have felt, I'm not interested in investing, so I don't want to have that conversation. And I think really the where you're interested is around what can the money do for you. Everybody's interested in that.
Yes, definitely.
And so I think women certainly have felt like they can't be part of the conversation because it's often technical and they feel like they don't understand. They probably have been ignored or talked down to in a financial meeting. So I think that, again, kind of puts us off.
Hmm.
Or they've asked questions and they haven't been answered. Okay. And so I think, there's so much that I think is important as foundational
Hmm.
knowledge. But I think to get there, to even get to the place where you can start accumulating that knowledge, there's, I think, 3 things that we really need to stop doing
Okay.
before we can get to the knowledge. And so the first one is stop saying you don't understand. Stop. Because if you think about what's happening, anytime even a foundational knowledge conversation comes up, as soon as I say, well, I just don't understand. Well, nothing you say to me after that is going to stick, is it? Because I'm so busy in my head thinking, I don't understand. I just don't understand. I hate money. I don't understand. Stop. Stop. Because I can tell you a couple of things for sure. You understand more than you think you do. Okay? First of all, you've learned a lot of things. Think about everything you've learned in your life, right? If you've got a driver's license, you've learned how to drive.
Exactly.
You are a real estate agent. You did the exams. You passed the courses. You got the license. We've learned all kinds of things. The foundational money knowledge that matters to your success, it's just the same. It's not rocket science. There's no
Right.
magic. It's really boring. If I explain an RSP account to you, that is true all the time, every day. It doesn't change. But if you're sitting there thinking, I don't understand, I just don't understand, you're not going to hear me. Right? So stop thinking you don't understand because you do. This is well within your capacity. If we even start thinking about investments in the stock market, if you have ever been surprised by the weather, wow, I didn't think it was going to be that warm today. You know how the stock market works. Okay, up and down, not predictable in the short term. That's it. That's all. There's no other rocket science there.
It's
okay?
mindset. It's your
mindset.
It's
so
mindset.
Stop telling yourself you don't understand. And I want you to go into those conversations thinking, wait a minute, I have already conquered a lot of things. I can figure this out. I can get the information that I need because it's not that hard. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is stop saying you don't like money, you don't like finances, again, money on its own is boring. Agreed. You do like what the money can do for you. So that's important. So again, quiet that voice down. And the third piece is I want you to stop. We all have a money story and it's emotional. So I tell my clients all the time, there is an art and a science to what I do. Okay. This is not purely a math exercise. If managing your money was purely math, there would be a financial planning kiosk next to your bank machine. You would punch in your numbers, it would spit out some paper, and you would go away and you would do exactly what those papers said. Okay, there is no such machine. Nobody is talking about it because it doesn't work. So this is emotional. And so I want you to stop feeling ashamed, stupid, guilty, like everybody else knows more than you do. They do not. All right. Across my practice, 80% of the questions that I answer for people is somehow related to money in, money out. Okay. We talk about this as basic. I don't use that term because if it was basic, we could all do it. We can't.
Right.
Okay. And again, the methods that we often put forward to people don't work. And yet we keep putting them forward.
Okay. Got it.
All right. So again, you're not worse off than anybody else. You're not bad at this. If you've made decisions in the past that you wouldn't make again and that hurt you, just don't make them again. That's it. That's all. Right? Because dropping that emotion, that negative emotion, is going to let you get the information that you need to make changes. Right? So as long as that's in the way, it's literally blocking you from getting the information that you need and making the changes that you can make. So I think if you do those 3 things first and then go find the information, then we've got a shot. Does that make sense? Right? Then we can make change.
You know what? That makes 100% sense. And I think not only for financial planning, but just life in general. This is kind of like the crux of how we should live. No,
widely applicable.
I know. Don't feel you're silly. Always feel there's no. I always believe there's no stupid question, because people, if you have the question, a ton of other people have the same question as you do.
And that, right? And somehow in this space, we are sure that everybody else is doing this better than we are. I often have my clients say to me, this must be the worst situation you've ever seen. I do family business transitions, which get complicated. So sometimes we've got, 10 or 11 adults in the room and we're trying to figure out how do we take this thing and transition it from parents to children. And one of my families keeps saying, we must be the hardest family you have. You are not. And I say, you're not. Right? Like, again, we all have our things. Other people have the same questions. And so if we could just quiet that voice down, then we can start looking for the information that we need. Okay? So I think those are the 3 things you've got to stop doing before you start trying to figure out, where am I? What do I need to do next? So going back to your question about what's important to know, I think one of the biggest things is how much money is coming in and when. Okay, so that, again, 80% of my work across all of my clients is related to this money in, money out. We're often confused on what's coming in. And by that, I mean, if we have signed a job offer for $80,000 or $100,000 a year, that's not what lands in our bank account. It's not.
Correct.
So what lands in our bank account actually, and when I have sorted out a couple of, I keep running out of money at the end of the month or before the end of the month, what is happening? Arranging your expenses so that they line up with when your pay is deposited can be huge, right? I had a client who was accumulating debt on a line of credit. They were up to about $25,000. They were really frustrated because they made really good money and they knew that. And looking at it, it was their mortgage payments were mistimed to their pay deposits. And they had accelerated the mortgage payments because biweekly is better. And so they did that, but they didn't look at when is the money coming in though? And so they just would go to the line of credit to cover the shortfall, and they would say, when I get paid, I'll do and then, well, okay, when we get the tax return back, then we'll pay off the line of credit. But by then they were so frustrated with feeling like we're working really hard, we make good money, how come we're running out, that instead of paying off the line of credit, they would book a trip to Italy. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. There's that emotional
that.
thing. I need a break.
Yes. And so for them, once they went to the bank, they rearranged their mortgage payments so that they lined up with the pay deposit. So the money came in, mortgage payments came out. And then what that meant was the amount that they were looking at in the bank account was the money they could spend. Do you see? So understanding actually what's coming in. And then the second thing is understanding what is scheduled to go out. Okay? So often we talk about budgeting, right? You should be able to budget, and you should break your spending into all these categories. You should decide this month I'm going to spend, $100 on clothes and however much on groceries. That's complicated. In my entire career, I have literally met 7 people who can operate like that. Okay, 7. The rest of us need a different system.
Let me know what that system is.
I am going to. So if we know how much is coming in and when, like how much lands in your bank account, then I want you to just look at what is scheduled to go out. Okay, so housing costs, if you have a car payment, if you have a Netflix subscription, all of those things are money you have already spent. You cannot make a different decision on it.
Right.
So if we know what lands in your bank account, we're going to subtract what are all of my fixed payments that are coming out in this pay period. How much money have I already spent? And then look at what's left over. That's the money that you have to spend on. Our big 3 are usually groceries, gas, and clothes. And so if the pay comes in, your fixed stuff you've calculated, okay, my mortgage payment's coming out this pay period, my phone bill, my Peloton membership, whatever you've got. If you have $800 left, that's what you've got. I don't care if you spend $800 on clothes, you got to find grocery money somewhere else. Right. Okay. So this is where, because those amounts vary so much, it's hard to get it dead on. And we're always budgeting in hindsight.
Right.
Right? We pick numbers because they sound good. And then we do the thing. And at the end of the month, we look backwards and we feel bad and we feel stupid because we didn't hit it. This way, if you know, okay, I have $800 to make choices on until my next paycheck, then you know. Okay, if you're not buying clothes, you know roughly how much gas you need. If you want to go out with friends and spend $100 or $150 or $180, great. Just know that you should probably cut back on your groceries. Do you see what I mean? So that gives you the flex, and it gives you the information that you need to not overspend in that pay period.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And actually not overspend, but maybe we need to save or maybe we need to cut back. Maybe it's a matter of...
We do. That's going to make it pretty clear, right? Because we often lowball our expenses. And I had one client, we had gone through this exercise. They felt like they, had really cut as far as they could cut. They were still running out of money. They, this, that, and the other thing. But so we did start getting a little more detailed on their spending. I asked them to kind of really watch what you're spending. So they went through the credit cards, they categorized things. And one of the things that he said to me in a follow-up meeting, he said, I had a category for gas in our spending. And he said, what I realized was every time I put gas in the car, I didn't pay at the pump. I was going inside And I would pick up an energy drink and some snacks.
Right.
He said, so that on the credit card, it was $50. And I said gas. And I said, I can't get that any lower because I have to drive for work and our child's in extracurriculars. And so there's nothing I can do about that. And he said, as it turns out, there is something I can do about that. Because $10 or $15 of that was the snacky stuff. And so once he was aware of that, you've got options, right? You can cut it out. You can buy it from the grocery store and put it in the car, right?
Exactly.
Still eat it when you get gas. That's fine. But can you spend less, right? So sometimes it's about getting the information down. So pinning down, what do we know for sure, right? Your housing costs for the most part. What's scheduled to go out. So then we're left with a narrower list of things and we're left with an amount. Are the things fitting in? If they're not, why not? What choices can we make? What choices, is there money that we're spending that we're not getting any fun out of? So I often talk to my clients, if you spend $100, ideally I want you to get $100 worth of fun out of it. Or if you can get 110, like good on you. If you're not though, stop it. Okay, so sometimes we all have patterns and maybe those patterns aren't actually working for us anymore. Right? So if you're a habitual, like again, going back to my client, he was doing the snacks and energy drinks. Once he realized that, he had the opportunity to say, do I want to keep doing this? Is this valuable to me? So we all have some patterns that maybe we could stop and not miss. If you stop and you miss it, maybe bring it back. Don't cut there. Financial planning, sometimes we think about it as like sucking all the fun out of your spending.
No.
Don't do that, please.
No.
Do not do that. So if you know how much is coming in and when it's coming in, then you know what's scheduled to go out. You've really kind of carved down a lot of your unknowns. Okay, so that's going to give you much more confidence. So I think those are the first two things about what is it important to know. I think the third thing that's important to know is you need to know how to ask questions. Okay, we have this funny idea going into financial conversations, and you said it back at the beginning. Women in general say, I don't want to have the conversation because I don't know. I don't know enough. Okay. I know very little about the practice of medicine, and yet I go to my doctor. Your first-time buyers know very little about buying a house, and yet, okay, we don't need to know the answers. We need to know how to ask the questions. You don't need to be the expert. What you do need to know is how to get the information that you need to make a decision, right? So we all know how to ask questions. So, and I think when you're in that situation, really what you're trying to do is you're trying to prompt that expert to explain it to you, right? So in your situation, when a client is, looking to buy a house, they found one that they like. If I just said to you, can you just walk me through all the steps? Nicole, I make decisions better when I understand the flow of what's going to happen and what I need to do. So can you just explain that to me?
Yeah, I know.
Right? You can use that with your money. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. It works when you are in any money conversation. Can you just break that down for me? Or could you explain how this is going to work if I agree to what you're offering me? Okay, so you're at the bank and they say, great news, you can increase your credit card limit. You can actually decide if you want that or not, right? So what happens? What happens if I take this bigger increase? And then you're gonna make that person on the other side of the desk explain it to you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Really helpful question. Is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you think it's important for me to know?
It's an awesome question.
Right? You don't need to know. Make them tell you. Another question, I think, especially in an investment conversation or any type of product sale, insurance, policy, investment option, how will this benefit me? Because then what you're looking for is, did that advisor listen to your goals? Can they tell you why? If they fall into, well, the return was this, that, and the other thing, and it's so fantastic, and it's, okay, that's nothing to do with me, right? Nothing. So how will this benefit me? Again, especially in that investment, borrowing conversations, just saying that, and then just listen to the answer. And if it doesn't feel like the person understood what you're aiming for, maybe don't do it. Maybe get another opinion. Because again, we often, headlines are really powerful. Social media is really powerful. What our friends are doing is really powerful. I met with a client. This was earlier pandemic. He had just been laid off. He had not delayed his mortgage. Remember back at that time, you could defer your mortgage payments. And that was his biggest question for me. We got on the call and he said, Sara, all my friends are telling me I should defer my mortgage and I didn't do it. And maybe I should still do it. And we talked through how much do you have? Can you make these mortgage payments? What was important to him, because it was really important for him to pay off the mortgage. Like, he really was debt adverse. In his situation, he actually had enough money to cover all of the family's expenses, including the mortgage, for 15 months if he didn't get another job. And so I said, all right, so deferring the mortgage actually doesn't help you. Technically, financially, it's going to hurt you because the interest is, right?
Exactly.
And you don't, and so, but he hadn't stopped to think about that because it was everybody else is doing it. That idea of why would you pay the bank if you don't have to? But those were none of his own goals. And so, again, asking, how will this benefit me in that situation or a similar situation? If the answer is just, well, you wouldn't have to make the payments for 6 months. Well, that's not my goal. My goal is to pay off my mortgage, right? So we can, even with that one question, and when we hear the answer, we can start kind of calibrating, wait, this is an option. It's not an option I want. Doesn't meet my goals, and I don't need it. So I'll pass things, right? That's a confident decision.
I really love that question. And the reason why I love it, it's because it's a positive way of spinning on or getting information with regard to the benefits of the potential offer. Because oftentimes people say, conversely, what's the catch? What's the catch puts things more in a defensive situation, whereas what's the benefit for me really, as you say, you listen to see what that response is to truly understand what is going on, or if the person across the table from you really understands what your goals are. So I love that. I think
Yes.
it's amazing. And your example of the mortgage deferral is amazing because I fully agree with his decision, because it's not why pay the bank. It's your mortgage that you're paying down. It's not the bank. It's it's your debt that you're getting rid of. It doesn't. The bank is getting the money, but it's your debt.
Yes.
So thank you.
And in that conversation, I said to him, you can defer if you want. If you're feeling worried about, he was unemployed, right? Okay, so a couple of things. We were early in the pandemic. We didn't know anything about how this was going to play out. He was unemployed. I said, if you want, you can go defer and wait till you're reemployed and then make a lump sum payment to kind of erase any do you see what I mean? So we often also think once we've made a decision, we're locked in. It's actually true less often than we think. And I think the really interesting part about that, the next question I asked him, I said, how do you feel about your options for reemployment? Like, how is this feeling? And he says, oh, I've got 2 interviews lined up. Okay.
There you go.
All right. So again, we sometimes have trouble connecting our own information. A lot of what I do for clients is really connect all of the pieces, because we tend to break them up and deal with them one at a time.
Right.
And there's huge value in, whenever you need it, getting that big picture overview of actually, where am I? What do I have? What are my opportunities? I do think risk is important.
Yes.
You're right. I don't like phrasing things as what's the catch, because it very much also then puts you in a position for the person explaining it to go down a, well, if you can't see the benefits, you're not very smart road. Advisors tend to be more polite, but that's the upshot. So I think they explain the benefits, but also I think asking, can you just explain the risks to whatever it is? Because again, there's risk in everything. And so just explaining, because often we get sold or things are portrayed. And to go back to, I mentioned the Canada Pension Plan, delaying payments until you're 70. A lot of the media around that has really been written towards, you're slightly dim if you take it at 65. You can get way more if you wait until 70. That is mathematically true. If you don't live to 70, though.
Exactly.
There's
That's
that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I am planning for a couple, there's a whole interplay in there that's actually impossible for me to tell you exactly what's going to happen. What I can tell you are the options. Okay. And none of the articles talk about that. If you go back to the original study that started driving all these articles, it actually says that right in the study. Like, this study is not suitable when you are trying to make a decision when you are in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It is also not suitable when you are retiring under age 65. The articles don't say that.
But
so I think, again, asking, what is the risk? Or in my role, especially around the delaying Canada Pension Plan, I will show the client. So when they say, I'm pretty sure I'm going to delay, great. I will show you that scenario. I will also show you where the risk zone is, because delay creates a risk zone. And so I say, here's your risk zone. Here's why it's there. Are you okay with that? We all take risk.
right.
There's no way to eliminate all risks from your life. It's not possible. So I'm not saying don't go ahead. I'm saying I believe you should make decisions knowing where the risks are.
Exactly. Being informed.
Right?
Understanding your situation.
Being informed. And then if you hit that point, you also kind of know what to do, right? Like, you also can think a little bit better because you're not so surprised. We do not think well when we're surprised. So understanding what are the risks, but asking it that way,
Mm-hmm.
as you say, rather than getting away from this what's the catch
Exactly.
conversation.
Exactly.
Certainly that's how we approach a lot of financial conversations,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we've probably been a little burnt once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
But trying to let go of that,
Right.
and kind of stay in the conversation you're in.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That is like, it's honestly, it's art and science, and it's understanding the mindset. Really, I think based on, our discussion today, it's that mindset and removing the blocks, really thinking, stop saying, I don't understand. I don't have the information. I don't like money, because people try to have this negative connotation to money, but it's not money. It's what we want to do with the money, right? So
Right.
it's not that you don't like money. You need to be able to understand your finances. And taking that emotional element out, or understanding that there's an emotional element to it and there's an art and a science. It's,
Yes.
Yes, these are the facts, these are the numbers, but what are the other factors that are influencing how you may be making your decisions with regards to financing?
Yeah, I will land in conversations where people talk about taking the emotion out of it. That's not my goal.
Okay.
That's absolutely not my goal. One, because we can't. And two, because why? Why would you do that? Like to see a client get really excited about talking about a goal, I'm going to go back to money on its own, really boring, super boring. But how we can use money, that's exciting, right? I do think you should be excited about your life and the opportunities that you have, and goals are really amazing. So I don't think we want to pull the emotion out of it.
Okay.
I think acknowledging it is important.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a lot of clients that, don't like money. It's uncomfortable. I had one client a number of years ago. She would cry in the meeting every time. Every time.
Okay.
She would just at some point get overwhelmed. She would walk out. She would go to the bathroom. She would come back in 5 minutes later. Like, it's fine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's fine.
I got it. Mm-hmm.
The separation work that I do, at some point, one or both clients apologizes to me for crying. I mean, if you were not upset about the end of your relationship, that's a little.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not that we want to pull the emotion out. I think we want to acknowledge it, and we want to not let it run the show.
Yes,
it should not be running your decisions. It's going to be there. I think we often, in some ways, want it to be there. You acknowledge it, but it doesn't get to make the decisions.
Right. That's it. It's not. It's not controlling and driving you.
Correct.
You have it there.
Yes.
You understand. You acknowledge
Absolutely.
it. You respect it. But
yeah. I often said to my kids when they were younger, I didn't ask you if you wanted to. I said you needed to. It's kind of like right. I'm not going to ask you to like it. I say that to my clients. I'm not going to ask you to like it when markets go down and your accounts drop. That's going to be uncomfortable. I'm not going to ask you to like it, but we are going to talk about what's the benefit to you if you can go through it. Right?
So with that, Sara, any last words that you would like to impart with regards to our discussion today?
No, I think we really covered a lot. I really appreciate your ideas coming into this conversation, just around educating and making people more comfortable talking about money is just going to make them make better decisions.
Yes. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Time today. My guest today, Sara McCullough, left us with excellent nuggets with regards to financial literacy and financial acumen. She indicated that it's important to remove any self-imposed roadblocks before you delve in and start researching and asking questions that will help to improve your financial situation. Those key nuggets included: stop saying, "I don't understand." Stop saying, "I don't like money." And stop thinking that money is just about the numbers. There's actually an emotional component to money. And it's an art and a science. And each of us is unique. Yes, the science part is 80% of it is numbers. But the unique aspect is that each of our situations is different. And we need to recognize that emotional component and to not let it drive us, but to recognize it and to use it to help us make informed decisions. Like what you hear? Like and leave a review. I'd like to thank my producer, Stories and Strategies, for their great work. One last request. Please share this episode with at least one friend. Thank you.